Do you like to watch trains couple up or uncouple, or run in parallel, or run in multiple units, or in narrow gauge? Or do you like looking at layout diagrams? Well, this video has all of that and more. Hi, this is Burr Stewart, and welcome to part 149 of my continuing series of operations videos. This one really is an operations video because we have people, about 7 or 8 people in the room, all running trains. And it'll be quite the ride because we have quite a few things going on, not just coupling. Now in this case, we're coupling up 2 cars. You know how much we like to bang, but in this case it didn't mate. But now a few minutes later, we were backing up a different train and we had action on both levels. This is taking place in the Interbay yard on my HO scale model of the Burlington Northern set in 1973. Now this is one way you can uncouple cars. Stick a pick in there, get in between the knuckles, and there he goes. He's got an engine on the left side there. You might remember that car from a previous bang. And then a couple of minutes later, Ryan came over with these White Pass and Yukon GE engines that he's been putting electronics in. You can see that nice bright headlight. And they sound really good, so I'm trying to be quiet and let you hear it. Oh, nice. A little later in the video, he's going to take this all the way up to the top of the layout and then back down again, so we'll get to hear the dynamic brake. Here he's still climbing uphill. This is the town of Paradise. Oops. Not sure why that stalled there, but we're just breaking this engine in now that he's done the work on it, so we'll see. Maybe we'll clean some rail or clean the wheels again. As you know, that's Glacier Peak in the background, and it's a trestle that I built more than 50 years ago. It's still in service on the narrow gauge. Now for today's video, I thought I would take you around the corner here so you can see that you don't need very much width to have a really cool model railroading scene. See, I've got a curved backdrop here. It's only a couple inches from the track, and then only a couple of inches of scenery on this side of the track. And you can see I have some competing tracks down below. Seems to stall on switches. We'll look into that more. Yep, got a rock outcropping to work as a kind of a scenery barrier, if you will. But I was able to hold the phone up over and top and look down at it.
That's what we're going to do. Was that the one that didn't have a number? Yep.
Now, the whole purpose of this layout is to model the rainbow era on the Burlington Northern. And this is a really good example of what happens when you run a through freight north and south or east and west. You get all these different colored engines because it took them 7 years to repaint all the engines into a BN green color. Now, you'll see BN green on this layout, plenty of it. But we also have all these other colors. Now this set of 4 are coming out of the engine lead in Interbay yard and onto the main line. And once the switch is set for them to continue on the main line, they move to the left where they're going to pick up their train.
The two demerits, Burr, you line me onto a train.
And if you're really observant, you'll see one of these cuts of cars do a little bit of a jiggle when they couple it on. I don't have footage of that for you, but I'll be showing you something else cool at the same time. But just keep an eye out for one of these strings of cars to suddenly jerk to the right when these engines couple onto it. This is a consist of 4-axle engines which will be taking their train all the way up to Vancouver, British Columbia. Meanwhile, the GE diesels on the narrow gauge had made it all the way up to Opportunity. And so we took the opportunity to show you the engines and the train coming into the town and passing the station. This part of the layout is very high up off the floor. I'm 6'4", so I can see it just fine, but most of the people complain about it. I have to help them flip the switches up there. But I wanted to be able to run the narrow gauge somewhere and turn around, so we have a reverse loop up there. Now listen to that dynamic brake. Hear that whine? Cool. I mean, steam engines are more common on narrow gauge model railroads, and they're really cool to look at and to listen to. But having a dynamic brake on the narrow gauge with a couple diesel engines, I'm pretty thrilled about that, particularly since this is 1973 we're supposed to be modeling, so it makes sense to have at least some diesel action on the narrow gauge. So down below here we have some parallel play with a couple of guys working in the Bayside yard, and I'll show you more footage of that coming up in a minute. Okay. Looks like he knocked over a car with his elbow accidentally. Well, as you know, Brian likes to bring over diesels just because he can, and in this case he did. Now, that leased engine in the front with the blue paint, it doesn't belong in 1973, but it certainly belongs in the BN later, maybe in the 80s. So what can I say? It's a really cool GP38-2 and of course a GP9 and a, well, what is that last engine? Oh, look at that. Weathering. Details.
Okay, good.
2551. Look at the fancy tank on top of that thing. We've seen that before on this channel. But we don't mind seeing it again. At least I don't. You? Number 760, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, listen to those speakers. Almost sounds like the real thing. It must be another GP38, right? No, that looks like a GP35 to me. Some sort of a rebuild. So back in the Bayside yard, I wanted to show you these guys doing what's called a set out. So they came into town with this train, and there were 2 tank cars they needed to set out in Bayside. Now I'm going to show you where this is on the layout. That's a track plan, and there's the Bayside yard. I'll show you those plans in some other locations coming up too. I don't want to dwell on it too much because we want to watch trains here, but you can stop the video if you want to study the track plan.
All in.
They're backing up to drop those tank cars in the yard, and the switcher on the right seems to be waiting for him to finish. Now, I'm not sure why, because there is a switch lead that they could be using that wouldn't foul the main.
As opposed to the face without.
You see, that track to the right of the engines is the main track, and he has his train strung out on the main, which is fine. So you saw him uncouple those two tank cars, and now he's going to pull back out, couple up to his train, and go. That flashing blue light down by the fascia there is the transmitter for the proto-throttles. It's a transceiver because it's receiving input from them as well as, well, actually, I guess maybe it's just a receiver now that I think about it. I don't think the layout talks to the proto-throttles. I think they just talk to the layout. There we go. He flipped that switch so he can back onto his train. Now, if I were working this, I would be running that switch engine at the same time. That would make for some really cool shots. But I'm not running it. I'm just trying to capture it on video for your enjoyment. Okay, get ready. We're going to have another bang. We can hope. Oh, that wasn't a bang. That was a smash to the side. Oh, dear. Now, there's a long story to that, which is that if you want your couplers to couple reliably when there's a snowplow, like there is on the front of a wagon like that, you have to use a longer coupler. But the problem with a longer coupler is it has more of a tendency to go off to the side like we saw there. So you really can't win. You can try, though. We do have the train moving with all the cars. So we'll call that a win. Of course, he's blowing for the grade crossing. Not too convincingly, but he is blowing for the grade crossing, so we'll give him full credit for that. Going by the fictitious passenger station at the Bayside yard, and the caboose track and turntable back there, all the engines parked around the turntable. And now we're going to go over the squealer, so you'll get to hear some squealing sounds. There, you hear that? Well, we have now officially departed the Bayside yard, and we're heading south towards the Interbay yard in Seattle. If I back up far enough, you can see the whole train going by. And all of the car card boxes that I have on the front of the layout, which makes it kind of a mess. And I've been straightening out the stereo equipment after the remodel. It's a real mess. So meanwhile, there was a couple of trains passing right at the entrance to the south staging yard. So there is a train coming out. And we just saw the one that's going in, and of course they have to trade places. So let's see where that is. The south staging yard entrance is down at that corner of the basement. It's underneath the Stillaguamish River and right next to the Rainier Brewery. And for your rail fanning pleasure, we have an Alco C-636, my personal favorite locomotive on this layout. And the U-boat has pulled to a stop and is waiting. And this gives us a chance to look at all the cars on this train coming out of staging. There's not a lot of good to be said about hidden staging, which this is, if you study my track plan. But one of the things I do enjoy is that I forget which cars are in there. So when I pull a train out of hidden staging, I get the pleasure of seeing, oh yeah, there's 2 auto carriers there, and that Milwaukee air slide covered hopper. And those 2 gray tank cars are for Department of Defense, and that's going to be dropped off at Mukilteo at the bulk loading facility. And there's a Penn Central boxcar, which I'm very fond of. So now the caboose has cleared the fouling point, and if you know what that is, it doesn't mean you made a mess on the tracks. It means that you won't hit the train. If you've passed the fouling point, then another train can go by it without clipping it, as you'll see here.
Yeah, look at that buckling.
The U-boat train can just slip right by that guy and go right on into the track that he had just exited from. I discovered when we were running this that those 3 engines are not very well matched, because you see how they're sort of pulsing in speed. That's something that we made a note of, and I'll fix. Hopefully you won't have to ever see that again. So a few minutes later, our train is coming into the Interbay yard, having passed downtown Seattle. And here's what this looks like on the layout diagram. He's over by the stairs, go down to the basement there. And he's coming into the, let's see, the B track in Interbay. And the caboose there is on the end of the train. I mentioned to you, you're going to see somebody tack an engine onto that and make a little bang. At least I think you are. Just watch for that. If you can take your eyes off these engines. See, that Northern Pacific U-boat has the rotating roller bearings we like so much. Yeah, they're my auto racks. Very nice. You can guess they're going to be set out at the auto facility there on the side. Well, there goes that train. I didn't see the engines couple up to it, but must have happened sometime. Uh-oh, that car fell out of the auto rack. That blue car. So they gave me an engine to run, so I took this video while I was both running the engine and photographing it. And look what came on the other track. This is a section of double track approaching the Ballard Bridge, just north of the Interbay yard. And we were also running the Milwaukee Coast Route train, and they were both coming across the Ballard Bridge in parallel. How's that? We didn't even plan this.
I don't know where Burr
It just happened.
Burr's going to Skykomish.
All right.
So, in theory, what I
Model railroad video fun. That's what I call this. Look at that. Going by the Ballard station there. Oh boy. I should have weathered the trucks on the Milwaukee F-units there. That's embarrassing. Milwaukee tends to get second shift here, but it's not totally neglected. You have to say that. If you look back on my videos, we got plenty of Milwaukee action for you.
Yeah, I go by because when I stick on the load on because I have to because I have 7. And of course, okay, so yeah. Oh no. No. Someone didn't align behind.
No. We forgot to align the switch back there, so he went into the tunnel instead of staying on the main line. So he had to back out of the tunnel. That's normally where the jet job is. See, there's a Boeing spur there that he went into accidentally. So he had to back out, line the switch, and then go forward. Now, I was so busy enjoying his mistake that I didn't realize I needed to stop my train, too, and line the crossover.
Hey, Burr, you're not aligned down there. So just a heads up. It was aligned for me, but...
So I brought my train to a stop on the closer track. And he finished backing up, so he can hopefully proceed. Now, in the real world, they would have probably held the Milwaukee train so that I could get in front of it. But this is reality model railroading, so sometimes we do things that wouldn't have happened in the real world. But we do our best, right? This is pretty cool. Yeah, there's the jet job out exposed with the aluminum scrap and the Boeing tool cars, as they're called. So at this point, I made it around to the Delta yard in Everett. And we were having such a busy session that Dave had brought down a train from Skykomish, which was also there. This is the train on the right, and he had to wait for me. But unfortunately for him, I needed to do a pickup of those 3 cars in the back. So I uncoupled the engines and went back to get them. And you got to see those narrow gauge diesels just parked. So here's where the Delta yard is on the track plan. Now these cars that we're coupling onto, you'll see them in some future shots too. Bang! See, that didn't mate properly either. I tell you, this video is just one bad coupling move after another. So I zoomed in so you could see how hard it can be to center everything. This is not different from what happens on a real railroad. There we go. Not always easy to line up the couplers. You ever get tired of looking at an F-45? There's another typical 1973 consist with the Northern Pacific paint in the middle of it and BN on either side. So notice those 3 cars, the 2 BN woodchip cars and the orange thrall door box car. Because they're at the head of our train now, so you'll be able to easily identify this train by its first 3 cars. And poor Dave had to just wait for me to finish this. He couldn't do anything. Off in the distance, you could see some trains moving too. Okay, here we go. Let's put our train back together. I couldn't really get a good angle on this coupling job because the boxcar was blocking me. Well, that was all right, but I didn't stop it in time. So I was videotaping and running the throttle at the same time, so it wasn't perfect. And I also left the car cards on the track there because I wanted to remember to show you they were purple. And purple is the color of royalty, which is headquarters back in Minneapolis. So that's why these are on an eastbound train. We're picking these three up. If I showed you all the other car cards for this train, they would all be purple because we are leaving the railroad towards the east. Now, Dave's train, which is the one closer to you, on the other hand, has all kinds of destinations because it's coming in from the east to the west. So these cars will go all sorts of places on the layout. And that's the fun of a model railroad operating session, is to sort all these cars out, put them on the right trains, spot them at their final destination. And it goes on for quite a while. Hours and hours of fun. And in the case of this train, a certain amount of patience as well. Because Dave had to wait for me to get out of town.
Get to work.
I didn't stay to watch him do his job because I had to run this train. So now we went around the peninsula and climbed up towards the Skykomish staging yard.
I didn't see any email. I didn't see any email. I actually had to ask you.
Nice. You can see how you can use just a few trees and bushes to create quite an effect, even though this scene is only a couple inches wide along this cliff here. You do get the feeling that you're climbing up into the Cascade Mountains, just with a little bit of scenery.
I tend to start and restart trains very quickly. I feel like you have to have your head on the swivel more.
And it doesn't hurt to have a painting of Mount Index, which is a signature landmark in the Western Cascade Range.
Don't you come down here?
Yeah, I come down here. I just where the I'm going in terms of the other switches. I'm pretty sure that.
Now I'll show you where this is on the layout. It's over on the upper deck on the side above the Boeing spur. It doesn't look like an upper deck because we have scenery on the front of it. Because underneath this staging yard here is the south staging yard, which we started out earlier in the video, showing a couple of trains moving in and out of that. Now in this case, we're taking an available track in the east staging yard called Skykomish. And above it on a little shelf, you can see the Pacific Zip, which we featured in the previous video. In a couple of years, I plan to have offer a PhD for people who've watched all my videos and can tell me where all these places are on the layout. But for now, we're just having fun. We're not worrying about studying. Oh, there's a Penn Central gondola car. We're just having a Penn Central sort of day out here in the Pacific Northwest in 1973.
Unless you're sitting in the caboose. Did you ever get to a point?
One thing I love about an operating session is you start out with the engines facing you, because they all need to come into the layout, and then you end up with all the cabooses facing you because the trains have been made up and left. So that's pretty cool. I wanted to show you the caboose effect, I call it. It lets you show that you've actually accomplished something. And here again, you have an NP, a GN, and a BN caboose, indicating that the cabooses were also being repainted in 1973 and they hadn't finished the job. Now here is the Darrington local, having just left the Bayside yard in Everett and going up to the Darrington branch with some logs and other supplies. Lumber for the lumber yard there. There was a very large bakery type of operation that took flour in with the air slide hopper and a nice NP caboose. And finally, when everything settled down, I had a bunch of switching to do in Burlington yard on the upper deck. Bang! Whoops! Yet another failed couple. I can't believe it. This whole video, we only had one successful coupling up that I remember. So you can use an uncoupling pick to straighten it out. No big deal. And this whole cut of cars were cars that needed to be spotted in Burlington area. So there's Mount Vernon, there's the Anacortes branch on the left, there's a concrete branch back on the very far end. And I'm not going to show you all that today, but I did want to just show you that we enjoy local switching as much as we enjoy running the mainline trains. There's that new icing platform that Bill Messicar built for me a couple of years ago. Very nice. And with that, this is Burr Stewart. Hoping you enjoyed this video. You'll enjoy all the other videos on my channel, and mainly that you'll have much fun with trains.